Something's wrong with the forest near my town. People keep disappearing, and I think I know why. In the quiet town of Eldridge, life moved slow. Too slow, if you ask me. Nestled between dense forests and rolling hills, the place was the kind of sleepy town where everyone knew your business before you did. The most excitement folks got was the annual Harvest Festival, where old men drank too much cider and kids played games until the sun went down. But that was before the disappearances started. Before the forest began to hum with something dark. It started small. Mrs. Henderson's cat went missing. Then Tommy, the baker's boy, vanished on his way home from school. Just like that, gone. People whispered about wild animals or some drifter passing through. But I didn't buy it. There was something wrong with that forest. Something that didn't sit right in my gut. Then Clara showed up. She was new in town a year or so, but she had that look in her eye, like she'd seen too much too young. She told me once she'd come to Eldridge to escape her past. Her brother had disappeared years ago, and she never got over it. When Tommy went missing, something in her snapped. She decided to go into the forest herself, flashlight in one hand, a knife in the other. I tried to talk her out of it, but she had that stubborn streak. Once Clara set her mind to something, there was no stopping her. That night, the forest felt different. The trees seemed taller, their branches twisted like claws against the moonlit sky. The air was thick, heavy, like it was holding its breath. Clara told me later she heard whispers as she walked deeper into the woods. Soft at first, then louder, more insistent. They called her name over and over until it felt like the trees themselves were speaking. She found the clearing. In the center stood an old oak, its trunk blackened and gnarled like it had been burned from the inside out. At its base was a hole just big enough for a person to crawl through. Clara hesitated. Any sane person would, but the whispers were deafening now, pulling her forward. She crouched down, shone her light into the hole, and saw nothing but darkness. Still, she climbed in. The tunnel was narrow, the walls slick with moss and something else she couldn't name. She crawled for what felt like hours, the whispers growing louder, more frantic. Finally, she emerged into a cavern. The walls were covered in symbols that glowed faintly, like they'd been carved by something not quite human. And in the center of it all stood a figure, cloaked in shadows. Clara froze. The figure turned, and she saw his face. It was her brother, but wrong. His eyes were hollow, his skin pale and translucent, like he'd been drained of everything that made him alive. He smiled, but it wasn't a smile she recognized. It was cold, empty. "You shouldn't have come," he said, his voice echoing like it was coming from everywhere at once. Before she could respond, the ground shook. The symbols on the walls flared to life, casting the cavern in an eerie, pulsing light. Shadows peeled away from the walls, swirling around her like living things. She tried to run, but they closed in, their whispers now a deafening roar. Clara never made it out of that forest. Some folks say they've seen her wandering the trees, her eyes hollow, her movements jerky and unnatural. Others swear they've heard her voice, whispering from the shadows. The disappearances haven't stopped. If anything, they've gotten worse. I don't go near that forest anymore. None of us do. But sometimes, late at night, I hear the whispers too. They don't call my name, not yet, but I know it's only a matter of time. Whatever's down there, in that hole beneath the oak tree, it's hungry. And it's not done with us.